Hello there, I'm the student and today I'm going to show you why force limit is just a number. You can see that I have a force limit of 160,000 troops, okay? As you can see it already, 40,000, 40,000, 46,000, 40,000, 46, 40, 40, 44, 66, 56, 54,000. And all of that with just a force limit of 160,000. I have literally 500,000 troops in 1567, okay? And that with only an income of 141, which is really not that strong, okay? It's really not that strong. And you can see I have my army maintenance up like 100%. I'm drilling my armies right now, everyone, which still lets me have a balance of plus 30 ducats with paying only 50 ducats for 500,000 units, which means that I'm literally paying 0.1 per unit, okay? And that even though I am, of course, more than 3 times over my force limit, okay? I'm over my force limit. So most people would think, force limit, how can you go so far over your force limit? You would have to pay like 600 ducats or something, right? It's wrong. It's wrong because the calculation of that is really very interesting. And that is basically the true topic of this video. Yes, force limit is just a number, but actually army maintenance is just a number. If you know how it is actually calculated and how it actually works. You see, my base army cost, my base army cost for this 500,000 troops, you can see that on drilling armies, right? I am literally paying less than 10 ducats, okay? Less than 10 ducats for 500,000 troops, okay? So if I had the force limit of 500,000, then literally this number would be 10 ducats, okay? 10 ducats is so ridiculously low that I can't even imagine that is literally real, but it is real, as you can see. The big portion of that, like 4 out of 5 ducats that I spend on my army, is literally because I am over my force limit. And the reason for that is that I have minus 90% land maintenance modifier, which is such an incredibly rare modifier to stack actually, because I've never seen someone in an actual campaign stacking those modifiers, but it is so strong on the other hand that I really don't understand why nobody uses this modifier more often. Before I go on with those modifiers, because they are literally totally easy to get, I have to talk about the calculation of the land maintenance, because probably most of you won't really understand how this is calculated. One regiment has a base cost, okay? You can see this base cost is in this case 6.6 for a infantry unit, and actually it is a 10 base, okay? 10 ducats base that it costs, okay? Now normally it would cost 2% per month maintenance. Okay, which means that on a base unit that has 10, that costs 10, like from the beginning of the start without any modifiers, this would cost me 0.2 ducats per month, okay? Which means that a cavalry unit that costs normally 25 ducats, base cost, of course, you know that from your games probably, it costs 0.5 ducats per month, okay? This is where the base cost comes from. But you can see it actually costs me 0.02, okay? So literally only 10% of the base cost, which is of course because it is capped at 90%, okay? It is actually even better than that, because I'm just going to show you the calculation, how it is calculated right now on the screen probably. You have to know that all of those modifiers that you stack and all of the modifiers that you don't stack, they are multiplied with each other, okay? And then the result of all those multiplied modifiers and base costs then make the final cost, okay? There are two different modifiers that basically reduce that cost. The first modifier is called regiment cost. You can see regiment cost over here, the minus 5% thing, it's actually a mission reward, but the other one, the minus 10%, is from quantity ideas. Regiment cost applies on every regiment directly, right on the regiment and not on the entire army, okay? So this regiment cost counts for every regiment that you have, right? But then there are other modifiers that are type specific on the specific type of units. Such as in this case infantry costs. You can see I have 19% or basically 20% without inflation infantry cost modifier reduction, okay? And this modifier together with the regiment cost modifier, it is literally the same modifier. It is not multiplied with each other. You can literally count it on top of each other, right? So this means that my infantry right now has a reduction modifier of this 19% plus the general regiment cost of minus 15%, okay? So in total around minus 35%, right? Because it was 20% almost. Which means that this is already the first modifier, the regiment cost. So every unit of infantry costs me already 35% less, okay? This is a different modifier than the land maintenance modifier. The land maintenance modifier is actually a different modifier that is applied on the army after all the regimental things are applied on their regiment costs, okay? So basically I'm calculating this 0.2 base cost that an infantry regiment has times only 0.65 for the 35% reduction, okay, of the regiment costs. Then I'm multiplying that with a different modifier of this 90% land maintenance. So times 0.1. Which theoretically would mean that I'm basically over the top, right? It would normally cost me 0.013, okay? But as you saw a second ago, the maintenance per regiment is kept at 10% of the base cost. And you can see, of course, the base cost, as I said, of an infantry is 0.2 per month, which means that 10% of that is the hard cap of 0.02 per month, which is literally nothing, right? It's literally nothing. So it doesn't really matter if it's 0.02 or 0.013, it is basically zero, okay? Now, of course, if you now calculate this 0.02 times 500, because I have, of course, 500 regiments, right? Then this brings me to a base cost of 10 ducats. And this 10 ducats is exactly this 9.69 that you can see over there with drilling armies that it says over here. This is literally the base cost, okay? If you stack the modifiers so far. And of course you noticed that when I showed you that, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to bring both modifiers to 90% or something. It is enough if you have a combination of multiplying those two modifiers that is 90%, okay? That is enough to reach the minimum capacity. And now it gets interesting when it comes to the over force limit modifier that you can see over there. You see, the force limit is not exponentially. most people would think that it would actually be exponentially, right? So if I'm 100% over my force limit, so I have double the amount of force limit that I have in the limitation, then I'm paying double for those units. And then if I'm 3 times over my force limit, I would not pay 3 times, but instead 4 times, right? Because it's exponentially. That is the idea, right? And then if I'm 4 times over, I would pay 8 times the cost. That would be the idea of exponential growth of the over force limit modifier. But that is not how it works. How it works is way more simple than that. It actually takes the base cost, okay? So in this case, 10 ducats, that it has the base cost of my units, right? Without the force limit calculated. It takes that base cost and then it has a look on how far you are over the force limit. And in this case, I have 512 units. And my force limit is 160, so I'm actually 3.2 times over my force limit, right? And what it actually does is it takes that base cost of 10 ducats, right? And then it calculates this times the amount that you are over the force limit. So in this case, I'm a totally broken amount of 3.2 times over the force limit, right? But my base cost is only 10 ducats. Which means that the stuff that comes on top of that is actually 10 times 3.2, because I'm 3.2 times over my force limit. Which means that I'm paying 32 ducats for being over my force limit. And then because of some weird paradox maths, it actually puts another base cost on top of that, just edits it, right? Just adds it on that. So I have actually a 32 ducats penalty because I'm over the force limit, plus the base cost as a penalty because I'm over the force limit at all. So actually 42 that I'm paying because I'm over the force limit. And then that, of course, plus the base cost that I'm going to pay in any case, right? So another 10, which leaves me with 52 ducats for this 500,000 army while being more than 3 times over my force limit. And this is literally why force limit is just a number, because it only matters if your base army cost is high, and if your base army cost is low, then the force limit is basically not relevant at all. But now let's talk about the modifiers a little bit. You can actually see the modifiers down there also, not only in the modifier tab. So I'm just going to leave it right now over here. You can see I have plenty of modifiers, and those are not even all modifiers that are in the game. You see, I have 20%, minus 20%, or minus 19.9% in this case, from militarization. I have actually the militarization mechanic, as I am the Prussian Republic version of the Prussian monarchy, which gives also a militarization mechanic. And that militarization mechanic gives a minus 20% land maintenance modifier, alongside with, of course, plus 10% discipline. Then I have a special modifier that you can see over here, improved military administration, that also gives the 5% regiment cost as well as minus 10% land maintenance cost. That comes from a Lübeck or Hanseatic mission, which is over here, the Appoint War Minister mission. Of course, most of you know that this is the mission where you normally would get 5% discipline until the end of the game, but you could just have a look that all of those other modifiers are also totally broken, okay? And those are literally all the special modifiers that I have enacted. All of them, right? This 30% is like special, okay? That you cannot stack in every game. But literally everything else can be done as any nation, and I'm going to show you this right now with all of those modifiers. You can see, first of all, ideas. I've chosen to take quantity ideas. Quantity ideas are actually pretty good in this actually current patch. A lot of people are actually taking it anyways for the manpower, for the force limit and so on. But it also gives you minus 10% regiment cost that, as I said, is applied as a multiplied modifier, right? As well as minus 5% land maintenance. And it has policies. It has policies with admin ideas for minus 5% land maintenance modifier, and with economic ideas for another minus 5% land maintenance modifier. And those ideas are very common to take, and even if you take only one of them, you have the additional minus 5% land maintenance modifier. And then, funnily enough, economic ideas in itself has another minus 5% land maintenance modifier, okay? So with only 3 ideas, you can indeed actually get 20% land maintenance modifier reduction, as well as 10% regiment cost reduction. And then there is, of course, the military advisor. You can see this advisor is literally just 10% land maintenance, just to take from an advisor, right? You know, it also has the 5% discipline theoretically, but the land maintenance one is actually also very useful. If you think about it, that just this 10%, if you have 70% reduction or if you have like 60% reduction already, then this additional 10% actually makes a difference of minus 25% additional cost reduction, right? So totally broken, and actually lets you then get like 2 times, 3 times over your force limit. And you cannot tell me that 100, 200,000 troops more is actually worth 5% more discipline. This is not really relatable. Just this sheer amount of quantity has an insane impact on the outcome of a battle or war even. It is at least as much as 5% discipline of less troops could do. And then on top of that, there is the nobility. And you can see that the nobility, if it has 60% or more influence as well as 60% or more loyalty, then it actually gives you, on top of the manpower recovery speed, also minus 10% additional land maintenance cost. And this thing actually scales, okay? This thing actually scales. So even if you have only 50% influence, it already gives you like 7.5% reduction, right? So this is a very reliable modifier over here. And then there is a modifier that I haven't even enacted right now, which comes from this decision over here. This decision is a related decision to the nobility, which comes with this over here, this privilege that says Junkers, or in this case, or in whatever case, nobility forced conscription, which gives 5%, only 5% influence, nothing else, so really cheap to take actually, and enables actually this decision. And this decision gives you, based on the nobility influence, a modifier of another minus 7.5%, in this case land maintenance, and I don't even have this modifier active, okay? I already have 90% without this 7.5%, right? Even if I hadn't formed Lübeck, for example, or had take the discipline over here, I would still be, with this modifier, I would still be at, right now, at this point right now, at minus 78.5%, right, reduction. Now, this can be pushed to minus 10% reduction, but for that you would have to bring them to 100% influence, which honestly you could do easily, you know, if I wouldn't be a republic, I would probably easily have 100%, but over 75% it gives 7.5, over 50% it gives still minus 5%, which is also pretty much, and below that it gives minus 2.5%, right? There is one little downside. This modifier, as you can see, would go 20 years, but you can only click this decision every 25 years, which means that you would have a 5-year window in which you wouldn't have this land maintenance cost reduction, and therefore you would have to pay a little bit more in those 5 years if you want to rely on this modifier. But actually 5 years out of 25 years is not a lot of time in comparison to the reward. Then I'm actually Catholic, and funnily enough, Catholic, as one of the biggest religions in the game, of course, it has a 5% land maintenance cost reduction modifier right here. And then last but not least, you will actually have the war taxes. And you can see right now that I have actually enabled them, even though it costs me 2 per month of military points, which is probably not really worth it in this specific case of the war. And to be honest, I wouldn't need 500,000 troops. Like if I had 300,000, it would be more than enough to do whatever I want in this game. But anyways, I just wanted to show you how far you could actually push that. So that's why I actually enabled the war taxes over here, because they give another minus 15% land maintenance reduction modifier, the same modifier. And all of those modifiers that I just presented you, except for the militarization and the mission reward, all the other modifiers are literally generic. Everyone can get those modifiers, of course, like the Catholic one. You know, you don't really get this if you're Sunni or something, but you get the point, right? So they are totally basic, right? And for those of you who actually want to play with the parliament a lot in your games, there is actually also a parliament issue that gives minus 10% land maintenance cost reduction, but it of course disables the nobility, which also in other cases, such as for the manpower privilege over here or something, is in my opinion not really worth it. But for example, if you play as England, that has of course the English monarchy, that enables a parliament and the nobility, that is basically the jackpot, because then you get another 10% on top of all the modifiers that I already have over here, which means that at that point I wouldn't really need militarization anymore to get to minus 90%. And then also there are a lot of other modifiers from other mission rewards and other culture group reforms and so on, such as, for example, Russia has a special thing on the tier 5 reform that is called Boyar's Military Service, that already gives minus 5% land maintenance costs, but also enables a nobility privilege that scales with the influence and loyalty, that gives up to minus 20% infantry cost modifier, which means that the regiment cost that I've talked about actually, so this infantry cost over here wouldn't be 20% reduction, it would be 40% reduction, together with the 15% general regiment cost reduction that I have, would be 55% reduction, okay? And keep in mind that this regiment cost modifier is multiplied in the formula of the land maintenance with the land maintenance cost reduction. So if you get the infantry cost or the cavalry cost modifier down to minus 90%, you would have the same impact that you can see right here, even without going for the land maintenance cost reduction modifiers. And then of course a little thing, I can just piece out a second to show you that, to the point where I actually don't have the war taxes anymore, and you can see that this actually makes a huge difference. Right now I'm paying 132 ducats for being so far over the force limit, right? But keep in mind that while you are not at war, you can actually turn the army maintenance down to 0. And actually what it does, the army maintenance modifier, is a totally different modifier, okay? It is not multiplied with anything. It literally takes the outcome of your army maintenance and then halves it if you turn it totally down, okay? Which means that even if you pay 200 ducats or something at peacetime, if you turn the army maintenance down, you will literally only pay 100 ducats after that, which means that you can save insane amounts of money even without the war taxes while you are at peace, where you of course cannot use the war taxes. But as soon as you go to war and as soon as you want to use your troops, you can enable the war taxes again. I just wanted you to see how strong those cost reduction modifiers on is it infantry or cavalry or regiment or land maintenance, how strong those modifiers are if you use them or if you know how they work in the first place, for you to understand that actually the force limit is not the problem. Okay, the land maintenance is the problem. And the land maintenance as a thing that you can stack way better than land force limit. And as I showed in this video, like literally every nation in this game without special mechanics or abilities can get to minus 80% land maintenance cost reduction just with everything that every nation has, with the nobility estate, with advisors, with ideas and so on. Which means that this is literally not a special thing, right? And then if you have special missions or government reforms that help you with that, then it's even better because it makes it even easier to get down to that critical point where land force limit literally is just a number that doesn't matter at all. So I hope you enjoyed the video for today, and we are going to see as always on the next Monday.